and start recording. 3, 2, well, I'll try that again. 3, 2, 1. It's time for Clubhouse Chatter. Here's Normor Dez.
Man, I'm glad you didn't say the man, the myth, and the legend. 'Cause today, we have the very first Los Angeles Angel. And, I'm not too sure that a lot of people know that. And his name is Eli Grba. Eli, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine, my friend. Not too bad at all.
So
not bad for an old guy.
There you go. So your last name, what origin is it?
Yes, my people, Serbian.
Okay.
Serbian, not Syrian, Serbian. My grandfather on both sides of my family were from the former Yugoslavia.
Okay.
In that area. So, yeah, we're Serbian.
Nice. And so you were signed by the Boston Red Sox in 1952. Yes. And then you were taken in the 1960 expansion draft by the Los Angeles Angels as their number one pick.
Yes, but before that, I was traded from the Boston Red Sox in 1957 to the New York Yankees.
What was it like playing for the Yankees back then?
Oh, well, let's put it this way. Being from Chicago and being a Yankee hater, and then all of a sudden becoming a Yankee, and all those guys that, of course, I spent 57 and 58 in the service. I got drafted after I got sent to the Yankees. But anyway, when I got out, went to Richmond, went into the, then I got called up, and it was awesome. It was, I walked into the clubhouse, and my goodness, there's Mantle and Ford and Berra and Moose and Hank Bauer and, all the guys that I remember used to kick the White Sox butts all the time and everything. So it was quite a thrill.
Right. So in 1955, so closer to where we are, you played with the San Jose in the Cal League. And so back then they were a C League team of the Red Sox. Were they the Bees or what were they back then? The San Jose what?
They were, let's see, they called them the Joe Sox.
The Joe Sox.
J-O and then S-O-X because of, Jose and then the Boston Red Sox, so it was called the Joe Sox. And
so now, were they playing in Memorial Stadium at that time?
Yes, they did.
And so Memorial Stadium, actually, I worked in the Cal League in 2006. Memorial Stadium is like one of my favorite stops. I mean, just because it's just the old ballpark.
Yeah. Well, I have no idea. I haven't been back in a long time, and I don't even know if it's there. I have no idea. Or
it is. They still play. The San Jose Giants play there. Yes.
In the same place?
In the same place. Yep.
Well, I'll be darned.
So
they always kept that place was always meticulous. It was immaculate, I should say.
Right.
It was always, everything was done real nice there because the city owned it, I guess. Right?
Yep. City of San Jose still owns it.
Yeah, I'll be darned.
And so the LA Angels drafted you number one. What was that experience like?
Well, you know what it was? It was kind of disappointing for me, if you don't mind me adding this in, is that I didn't even get into the series to pitch, and I was mad. I didn't have the best temper in the world. Anyway, we, two of us, Duke Maz and myself, pitched batting practice 3 different times for the Yankees. So we were, if we ran out of pitchers in the last game, we didn't hardly have any pitchers left. Ryan Dern was the only one left. But and then we found out naturally through the media and everything else about there was going to be an expansion in Washington and supposedly L.A. And of course, everybody asked me. I would get people call me. Where do you want to go? Who would you want to go with? Well, naturally, I'd rather go to California. So I'll never forget. I was sitting by the phone when the draft came, and the phone rang, and it was Mr. Haney and Mr. Autry, and then even Rig he was there, Bill Rigney, and they welcomed me as the first Angel, which was quite a thrill. Really was.
So I'm looking at the 62 roster. And so you have one of my all-time favorite baseball men, Rocky Bridges. You have Buck Rogers, Jim Fregosi, Chuck Tanner. I mean, you got a handful of guys who managed in the big leagues.
That's right. That was a 62 team, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And so,
do you realize we finished third?
And then you had Bob Serve, former Yankee. Ted Kulzowski. Yes, Kulzowski. I mean, you guys.
You Californians can't pronounce all those.
Well, I'm an Oregonian. Close enough, though. But man, so I would like you. So I'm going to bring up a couple of names, and I would like you to describe them briefly. And so I've met Rocky Bridges a couple different times. And what is your memory of Rocky Bridges?
Very, very smart baseball man, but a very amusing, funny man. He kept you laughing all the time. Everything was light with Rocky. Rocky was a heck of a human being. Wonderful, wonderful man.
Always had that wad of chew in his mouth.
Always had the chew in his mouth, and always happy, and always had something funny to say to you, and something like that. Him and Tom Morgan, I think, used to come to the ballpark like at 2:00 or 3:00. And they'd sit there for quite a while, and just chat and that kind of stuff. But he's a very humorous man. But like I said, a good baseball man, very, very good.
What about Buck Rogers, former manager of the Montreal Expos? I believe he managed a couple of other teams. Montreal is the one that's coming off my head, though.
Yeah, Milwaukee too. He also. Yeah, because when I went to work for Milwaukee as a pitching coach, Buck was the manager there. Bob.
And what was Buck like?
Buck was I think it was funny. Buck was a happy-go-lucky. He loved to play. He loved to play the game. He was a happy-go-lucky guy. He hit from, I think he was a switch hitter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
He could hit a little bit, and he was a good athlete. And he became a good receiver. And naturally after, he caught a little while.
Right.
And so, and like I say, Bob, I talked to him maybe about 2.5 months ago. He's fine. He's living someplace down, he's probably, in the beach.
Nice.
Down by the beach someplace in California. So, good guy.
And Jim Fregosi, of course, he just passed away here recently. What was, he was young. He was 19 when he played with you.
Well, I got a little funny story. As you knew, or you probably know, as I have been known to go out a little bit and have some fun. Mm-hmm. And when Jim Fregosi came up, he was a skinny kid. I don't know what he weighed, 150 pounds or whatever. When he got called up, Rigney called me in the office and he says, "Do me a favor. You call me 33, my number. I'm going to room him with you. Take him out. Take him out and fatten him up a little bit, Take him and show him where you go to eat and the whole thing." And I said, "Okay, fine." Well, we did. And we took him to a few places. And I'm sure Jim had a couple parties at times, that we used to have every once in a while. So, he grew up fast.
Right.
Jim did. He sure did.
And then finally,
and you know what?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead, sir.
No, I'm just saying that, we used to play basketball in the wintertime there. We had a hell of a basketball team. And I probably loved basketball more than I did baseball. And we had Jim Krebs, Larry Friend, Hot Rod Hundley, myself started, and Jimmy Fugosi was the guard.
Oh, wow.
And when we played the Globetrotters before a Laker game, we had about 12,000 people in it. Jim stole the ball from Marcus Haynes twice.
Wow.
So, he was a good athlete. Jim's a hell of an athlete. He really was.
Right.
There's a lot he can do. As a matter of fact, when Joe Gordon became a coach with us, and he saw Jimmy, and his exuberance, and he's, all around, and the way he threw funny when he first came up to the big leagues. As a matter of fact, we used to always tease him that we had to have a screen up above first base because he was going to kill somebody there. But Gordon wanted to put him in center field because he said he's a free spirit, and he said he can run, and he can, he's going to hit a little bit. Put him in center field.
Right.
They didn't do it naturally, but it was a heck of an idea at the time.
And then tell us a little bit about Chuck Tanner, former Pirates manager.
Chuck that well.
You
Chuck
didn't know
wasn't there that long.
He wasn't
there.
32. He was an older guy.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something about Chuck Tanner. It was a very, very well thought of man. He was only there for just a short time when I was there. In 62. He came, I think, I don't know if it was, you sure it's not 63 you're talking about now? When Tanner was there?
I've got the 62 roster up. Actually, it's a 61 roster. Okay.
Well, he's a consummate professional. What can I say? I liked him. There's another guy that always I wouldn't want to mess with him. Mm-hmm. No way. You tear your head off. But the thing was, he always was a happy-go-lucky guy. Always had a good, very, very kind word for you. So. But little did I know. I knew him just a little bit, not very much.
Right. As a pitcher, was there one player that you hated to see come up to the plate?
Of course, there was a couple.
Okay.
Of course, Mantle.
Right.
Naturally, and I knew. Mantle told me he hated to hit my fastball. He hated to hit it because we used to throw batting practice in those days.
Right.
And we didn't just throw the ball over the plate. We threw it just like in a game. And he told me one day, he says, "Your ball's like hitting a brick." Well, he hit a couple home runs off me, and I'm not the greatest thinker in the world. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to throw the fastball. I sneak a slider in. Yeah. Well, both sliders went in the upper deck. Well, one in the lower deck, one in the upper deck. And another guy that kind of gave me fits was Nellie Fox, because he always hit the ball the other way, and Francona, because my threw a sinker and the ball always came back or whatever it was, and they always went the other way. So. Yeah, there's a couple other guys that I don't, because I was only there like 3.5 years.
Right.
And of course, all the great hitters. I had very, very good luck against Washington. The Senators, the old Senators, with Jim Lemon and Allison and Killebrew. I had good luck with them. And I had good luck with Detroit. I didn't say I beat them all the time, but Stengel used to always, I'd be a spot starter and reliever with the Yankees, and Casey would never pronounce my name. He'd always say the guy with a funny name, if he wanted me up. So I always pitched the second game of a doubleheader in Detroit, and it was always against Larry.
Huh.
And somebody asked him one day, it's a story, and I said, Case, how come you always pitch Grba against one of the other guys like Maz or Grba or somebody against Larry and not one of the, like maybe Ford or Terry? He says, I don't want to sacrifice one of my better pitchers against somebody that beats us all the time. So he figured get one of the stupid little young kids. So, that was his theory.
So I lived in Palm Springs for a while, so I'm I know Gene. I don't know Gene Autry personally. Of course, he's passed on. But what was Gene Autry like as an owner?
Like a father.
And you're not the first.
Like a
You're not the
father.
first. You're not the first to tell me that.
Like a father. He when, to fast forward, I went to work for his radio station, a TV station, later on in life. And this was when I was having problems with alcohol. But I still went to work for it, and I made a comeback like a damn fool. And I quit the job, and he would see me, and he'd always ask me, "Grba, how is your wife and how are your kids?" And then he'd stare at me and kind of put his hand on me and said, "You should have stayed at KTLA. You'd probably been the sports director right now." Oh, and you talk about somebody that's so bad. But he loved his players. He loved, he loved baseball.
Yes, he did.
And he never forgot you. He really didn't. He never forgot his players. He really didn't. Probably one of the finest men I've ever met in my life.
If you had to give some advice to a younger player, what would it be?
Learn how to pitch. Learn how to pitch. Not throw. You could throw all you want. I had good stuff, and I threw hard, and I tried to throw harder, and I threw harder. And being a pitching coach later on in life, and being for one spring training under the tutelage of Ray Berry with the White Sox, I finally found out what I was doing wrong. Trying to throw the ball too hard and not staying within myself. Stay within yourself. Find your niche. Find out what it is. Study or pick his brain, Maddox.
Mm-hmm.
I admired him so much, when I got out of baseball or when I was scouting or even, I just out of baseball and watching the games, the Brave games, I used to go, wow, if only. I never threw a changeup, Norm.
Wow.
I threw 2 changeups in my life, and they were by accident. And if I might just share this with you,
Absolutely.
I was pitching against Boston, and I got in the middle of my delivery, and I swear to you, and something said, turn the ball over. Just take your hand and turn it over. Turn it over. And I threw like a changeup to Yastrzemski, and I heard him say, "Oh, shoot," and he grounded second base. And the other time, I threw a hard sinker. The other time was I was getting beat bad, and I decided I was going to throw a 4-seam fastball, which I've never done ever since I've got the 2-seam fastball. Right? The 2-seam fastball is the most misused pitch in baseball today. Anyway, I won't get into that. But anyway, I went to a 4-seam fastball, and the ball cut. It went in. I threw a cutter. And they accused me of throwing a spitter right away because it was unnatural. You think I learned from that? No. There. Shows you what kind of pitcher I was. Dumb. Really. So I had the mentality of getting it and throwing it harder and harder and harder. Too many breaking balls, too.
Right.
Yeah, too many breaking balls.
What was, if you had to, I don't know, so if you can pick one highlight of your career, what was it?
The what? I'm sorry.
If you could pick one highlight of your Major League Baseball career, what would it be?
Of my life or my career, baseball career?
Of your baseball career.
Oh, boy. That's a tough question because I wore the pinstripes. And there's like only 2,200 players in the history of the Yankees that wore the pinstripes, even though I was only there for like a year and a half. But probably being the first player ever selected in a major league draft. And I'll tell you why it dawned on me that is my favorite. In 2011, I went back, they had me back, and I threw out the first ball. an opening day, and that was probably had my family with me, and that was probably the best time of my life, really. You know, and a lot of people say you should be with the. How about being with the Yankees? I said, yeah, but you know what? I was only there a year and a half, and here I was selected by the first player ever selected, and will probably be a trivia question from when I'll be gone. Somebody will say, who was the first player ever selected in the Major League Draft?
Yep. I tell people, as a kid growing up, and I don't care what era you're in, so growing up in the 70s and 80s, you dream, as a baseball fan, you dream of either playing for the Yankees or the Cincinnati Reds or the LA Dodgers, or back then it would have been the Brooklyn Dodgers. I've chatted with many people who've put on the pinstripes, and they just, it's like none other, because that's what you grow up dreaming of. Because the Yankees, I mean, how many titles have they won? 27, 28 World Series. I mean, they are the number one franchise in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and the thing is, I walked into the clubhouse, and I was blessed because in 1959 they had an Old Timers Day game, and they invited the guys that I remember when I was a kid growing up in Chicago: Vic Raschi, Allie Reynolds, on and on, Tommy Henrik, Jerry Coleman. Well, I'm sitting on my stool in awe of, here comes, and all these guys looked like they were 9 feet tall. Anyway, all of a sudden there was all kinds of chatter in the clubhouse, and all of a sudden the door opened, and I wasn't looking where the door was, and everybody turned, and nobody said a word. It was like God just walked in the door, and Jody came in, DiMaggio. And he walked over to me, Norm, and he said, now get this, hi, my name is Joe DiMaggio. Like I didn't know who the hell he was. Afterwards, after he left and everything else, I found it very, very amusing that, he said, my name is Brett. No, I'd have never known who you are. So that's, and I said to myself, wow. It was amazing. It really was.
That's a pretty cool memory. I work with the McMinnville Parks and Recreation here in Oregon. Been with them 20 years. I help run their baseball program. And one of my old bosses, Dan Homeras, grew up in San Francisco he grew up in the same area with the DiMaggio brothers. And so he tells stories about playing sandlot ball with them and stuff like that. And just listening to you talk about Joey D like that, gives me chills. I mean, I've never met the guy. I know the history of him. I know the history of the Yankees, and he is just that. He is history. And
well, there's another story here too. When I first, Ted Williams was my idol. We used to play strikeouts. And if the White Sox, you pick a team,
mm-hmm.
and, chicken claws and everything else, you pick a team, and, my second team was always the Boston Red Sox, because I was a Ted Williams nut. I used to bat like him, because we used to have to bat if the hitter was right-handed like Vern Stevens,
mm-hmm.
or Ted Williams used to have to bat like him, left to right. Well, we get into New York. I get called up. We go to New York. We're there. And we're playing Boston on a Wednesday. And from there, we're going into Boston to play them in, I think, a 3 or 4 game series. So I walk out in the field when I first get there on a Wednesday. I got there late, that's, from Richmond. Game was just going to start, and who do I see? One of the first players, Ted Williams. I said, oh my gosh. So now, we go to Boston. I get told I'm in the bullpen. We're losing. He brings me into the game. My first strikeout in the big leagues, Ted Williams.
Wow.
Next day, I'm hitting fungos, and he looks over at me, and he says, hey, kid. And I'm saying, me? And he said, "Yeah, kid, you got a hell of a slider." Well, I like to fell over. Holy smokes! I go into the dugout. Turner takes me aside, the pitching coach, and he grabbed me. And you don't grab me, Hey, what are you doing? I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "What did he tell you?" I says, "Oh, he said to me, I got a heck of a slider." He says, "He's setting me up. Don't ever throw him another one."
Wow.
But yet, my first strikeout. And then when he talked to me the next day, oh man, holy smokes. And then, of course, I think I'm almost positive I gave up the last home run he hit at the Yankee Stadium. He was up to me.
Isn't it the way baseball works, though?
Yeah.
So once again, I have Mr. Eli Grba on. Eli, we would love to have you come back on the show sometime again and talk about pitching and what you're seeing in the game today. And from a perspective of, somebody who pitched back in the 50s and 60s. And I know it's different. And
very.
I got to get ready for another guest. I got another guest coming on here in a couple of minutes.
No problem, Norm. I appreciate your the time and everything else to talk.
But love chatting baseball with the old timers. I put in the mail today. I put a couple of baseball cards for you to sign. So
okay.
They're on their way, and we'll add them to the collection. And let's do this again.
All right, no problem. I'm here. You know where I am.
Sounds good. Once again, Mr. Eli Grba. Eli, thank you for coming on Clubhouse Chatter.
You take care, pal.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. So once again, we are sponsored by, drumroll, Base by Pros, Mitch Canham up there in Washington, and by Baseball Dudes, also up in Washington with Chris Gazelle. Baseballisms, I'm wearing the Flagman shirt and got the hat on, so check them out, baseballisms.com. And Mark Canham with MDM Designs. We have a new logo, by the way, for Clubhouse Chatter. I threw Brian a curveball. Let's see if he could find it. And he doesn't have it, so that's okay. We do have a new logo. We will be doing some shirts up and some other things. If you're interested, let us know. We stream live all the time, yamhilltoday.com. If you want to sponsor the show, shoot me an email, normbo18@gmail.com. I'm Norm. That's Brian. Ozzie Canseco will be coming up here in a couple of minutes. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening and watching Clubhouse Chatter. Don't go away. Ozzie Canseco coming up next.